Welcome. So this is the second part of our building a enterprise network, a campus network, and just a quick review of what we did in the first part. So we created a set of actually kind of 4 pairs of access switches. And as you can see here, these over here are in the same IP network, belonging to the same VLAN 10. Same here, VLAN 10. These over here, let me change colors. These are on the same IP network and also associated with VLAN 20. And then let's see if I can find a couple more colors here. Let's go with green over here. So this is another IP network, 1030.0.0. These are all /16 networks. And we associated that with VLAN 30. And I think I've got one more color left in me here. We'll go with orange. That looks like a red, doesn't it? 1040.0.0 VLAN 40. So right now, the way that we have this, the only devices that can communicate with each other are the devices in the same IP network, in the same VLAN. Okay, we cannot go across access switches here, like access 1.1 to access 1.2, at least these 2 pairs of access switches, because obviously we don't even have any kind of physical connection yet. We're going to take care of that today. All right, so let me go ahead and get rid of that. And just kind of a quick reminder here, here's my VLANs. I put them down here, which IP networks are associated with which VLANs. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing that we are going to do is add a couple of layer 3 switches or multi-layer switches. So I'm going to go here to switches and I'm going to grab the 3650. Okay, and I'm going to put this right here somewhere in the middle. I'm going to do the same over here. This is going to be our distribution layer switches. And what I'm going to do real quick here, just remind us how to do this. I'm going to go up here and I got to power it on before it lets me do anything. Okay, so I can't get to CLI config or anything. So what I'm going to do is go over here where it says power supply and drag and drop that power supply right there. I will do the same thing over here. Drag and drop the power supply there. All right. And then what I am going to do here is I'm going to go over to config, and I'm going to just change the name. I'm going to call this distribution -1. And go over here, call this distribution -2, just so you know which ones I'm referring to in this video. All right. Next, let's make some physical connections. So what I'm going to do is go over here, crossover cable. I'm going to go from this access switch, gig 01, to gig 101 on this switch here, the layer 3 switch. I'm going to go from gig 01 to gig 102 over here. I'm going to do the same thing over here, gig 01 to gig, there we are, 101. And we will go from gig 01 to gig 102. Now you notice that these link lights are off right now. Okay. We've got to do some configurations, of course. So let's go ahead. Get started here with configuring the distribution switches, making some changes to the access switches. Basically, what we're going to be able to do at the end of this part of the lab, at this end of this video, is that devices in the same VLAN, same IP network, will be able to communicate across these. We're going to make these trunk links. So this PC and this PC be able to ping each other, also this PC and this PC. But beyond that, we're going to see that we're going to make these distribution switches the default gateway for these end devices here. And this distribution switch will be the default gateway for the devices in these IP networks, these end devices here. All right. Yeah. So devices in different IP networks will now be able to communicate with each other, not just across the same pair of access switches here, but also across the distribution switch here. We're going to see that it's going to go via the distribution switch. This will be the default gateway. But let's get started, Rick. Instead of talking about it, let's actually do it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is go over here, CLI. Let's expand this a little bit, press return to get started. And let's go ahead and paste that in. So first thing I'm doing is just the basic commands. Let's go over here to distribution 2, do the same thing. I'm copying and pasting. Sorry about the pause there. All right, let's paste that. Same basic commands that we've done on the previous switches. All right, next. Well, let's go ahead and configure these switches with all the VLAN names. Again, this is not something we have to do. But what you're going to see me doing right now is I'm going to add the names of all the VLANs. VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, just like we did previously on the other switches. Let's go over here to distribution 2. Do the same thing. Okay. All right, I'm going to do show VLAN. That allows me that do right here. If you're not familiar with that, but in global configuration mode, it allows me to use the show command. I'll do brief after that. Get my cursor out of the way. Okay, so you can see that we've created all the VLANs. Notice that all of our ports or interfaces are by default on default VLAN 1. All right, moving right along. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and configure our distribution switches with a default configuration mode. So if you remember we did this on the access switches. I'm going to put them in the parking lot VLAN, all the ports in the parking lot VLAN, make them all access mode and put them all in shutdown. So let's go ahead and do that. Wow, that was fast, huh? Okay, so I did interface range. So that's all the ports on that distribution switch. Gig 101 through 24 and gig 111 through 4. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 255. That's our parking lot VLAN and shutdown. Let's do that over here as well. Okay. Show you no magic here. There we go. Same thing. So everything's shut down. Everything's in a parking lot VLAN. All right. So now what do we want to do? Now what we're going to do is configure these as trunk links. Okay. Also here. So first I'm going to do it on the distribution switch. I'll do it on both distribution switches. Then I'll have to add also the trunk link here on the access switches for the link that they share. So let me wand over that. Can you see come on. Oh, let me show that again. All right, let me do that again here. I had my preferences off, so it did not show me the link. There we go. So that's up here in Cisco preferences. I'll show you that real quick here. So great stuff up here. Okay, show port labels when mouse over in logical workspace. I had that disabled. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with those trunk links. Okay, so on both D1 and D2, I'm going to go over here to distribution 1. Let's go here, give yourself a little room here. I'm going to paste. All right, you can see what I did. So I did it for this port and this port. So there's my interface range for both gig ports. First, I didn't have to do this. No switch port access VLAN 255. I took it out of the parking lot because actually I made it a trunk. And turned off dynamic trunking protocol, so we're not doing the negotiation. I'm trunking for all the VLANs except the parking lot. And here's my native VLAN, and I did the no shutdown. Yeah. And we still have a red link light here because we haven't done the trunking over on this side yet. And this port here is shut down. Let's go over here. Do the same thing. Move that over. You can see same group of same commands. Again, red link lights here because the other end is in shutdown. Although we did no shutdown. All right, looking good, looking good. All right, so what's next? Well, we got to do the other end of that trunk link, right? Okay, so let's do that. So what I'm going to do is go over here to the access. Let me grab my. All right, enable class. There we go. Config T. All right, let's go ahead and do a paste. See what we've got going on here. Oh, it looks, we've got spanning tree running. That's always a good sign. All right, gig 01, that's this interface here. No switch port access VLAN 255. Take it out of the parking lot. We are enabling it to be a trunk. No dynamic trunking protocol. Same allowed VLANs, no parking lot. There's our native VLAN, needs to match on both ends. No shutdown, exit. There we go. We see some good stuff coming up here that the line protocol is up. And in a moment here, we should see these turn to green, right on cue. Okay, let's do the same thing on the other switches. And go here, command line, enable, class, config T, there we go, paste. Yeah, same commands. Why, one of the things I did to make this easy, and it's also nice to make it consistent. So you don't have to, remember every port, and kind of consistency in your cabling and in your design. I use the same port numbers, gig 01 on both. Okay, let's do these real quick here. Enable, class, config T, and paste. There we go. And let's do it over here. And paste. Okay, so I've got all 4 of these access switches now. These are still running spanning trees, come up in a moment, but all 4 of these all 4 of these access layer switches, I configured the trunk links here. So we should now have trunking between all of these pairs of switches. Okay. All right, so what do we got going on right now? Okay, so these are just right now layer 2 switches. Okay, we're going to configure them as layer 3 switches also in a moment. But layer 2 switches and trunking. So what does that mean? Well, now just like we have a trunk link here, remember this second link is not being used because we have a loop and spanning trees blocking it, but we have a trunk link here. But just like we have a trunk link here that connects devices in the same VLAN IP network to each other, we now have a trunk link here and a trunk link here. So that is now going to allow devices in the same VLAN, same IP network, to be able to communicate with each other. Okay, so let's give that a shot here. Let's go over, take a look here, desktop, command prompt. Okay. All right, and I'm going to do IP config. Okay. And I'm going to go from here to here, show you that we can ping devices in the same VLAN, same IP network, 10, 10, 2 from over there in column 2, 100. And there we go. All right, so now we've got communications across these trunk links. Trunk links just carry multiple VLANs. Let's just do one more here. Let's go over here. Make sure there's no magic happening. Okay, IP config. Let's go ahead and ping this device here, column 2, from this device here in column 1. Ping 1020 2.100. And we are looking good. All right. But let's go back over here. Although we have a default gateway, we haven't configured any device as our default gateway. This is going to be our router or layer 3 switch. But let's verify that I still cannot ping any devices in another network. So from this device here, 10, 10, 1, 100. Okay, that's where we're at right now. Okay, I'm going to verify that I still cannot ping devices in a different, let's see, can't talk and type at the same time. Can't ping a device in a different IP network, VLAN. Not even next door, let alone this device over here. Sometimes we have to wait for one or two just to make sure, because it could be, because it's an ARP request. But in this case, we don't even have a default gateway. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead now and get started in configuring these devices here as layer 3 switches. All right. So what we're going to do is on this device, what we're going to do is we're going to configure it to have switch virtual interfaces, SVI. Okay, I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So let me make sure I'm in the right place here. All right, I wanted to make sure I could bring up my my little copy and paste sheet that I'm using for all these commands. All right, so let's go here. Let me go ahead and show you the commands, and I'll explain what we're doing here. Wow, look at these. So I've just added 2 switch virtual interfaces. One is interface VLAN 10. Here's the IP address. And then we do no shutdown. Same thing here, interface VLAN 10, IP address, no shutdown. Now, the significance of these IP addresses, this IP address associated with switch virtual interface VLAN 10 is the default gateway for all these devices. Let me show you here. Here's a device on a VLAN 10 port. And its default gateway, here we go, is 10.10.0.1. So that's its default gateway. This will be this switch here in a moment, this layer 3 switch. Devices in the 10.20.0.0 network /16, VLAN 20. Their default gateway will be this distribution switch here, switch virtual interface VLAN 20, and here and the IP address that we did right there. All right, so let me talk a little bit about what we've just done here, what we're going to be doing here. Switch virtual interfaces. They play a very important role within the context of layer 3 distribution layer switches, like we see here with distribution 1. The SVI is a virtual interface with an IP address that we see right here, okay, that is associated with a specific VLAN, VLAN 10. An SVI on a layer 3 switch that we did here on distribution 1, okay, enables it to perform routing functions between VLANs. Okay, now we're going to have to configure routing, and we'll do that in a moment, configure it to enable routing on it. Okay. This is so we're not going to need an external regular layer 3 router. We think of it as a traditional router. This device does do routing. Okay. So this SVI is typically going to be, and is in our case, the default gateway for end devices on that same VLAN, that same IP network. Okay, so we configured the 2 switch virtual interfaces. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now, something important to make note of. For end devices to be able to reach this switch virtual interface, let's take 10.10.1.100/16 right here. It's on a VLAN 10 port. For this device to be able to reach its default gateway, this switch must either have an access port or a trunk link that belongs or includes VLAN 10. So if this was, for sake of argument, if this was a link here and these were both VLAN 10 ports, that would work. Of course, wouldn't work for VLAN 20 here, would it? But we made this a trunk link. So this switch and this switch can forward frames for VLAN 10. Okay. So this device can reach its default gateway because it's using a trunk link that includes VLAN 10 to access this interface VLAN 10 and this IP address. And we'll see the same thing. It's for same thing here for this device on VLAN 20. Okay, this is a VLAN 20 port on this access switch. This is a trunk link that carries VLAN 20. Therefore, this IP address, switch virtual interface IP address on this SVI, VLAN 20, this device can reach this default gateway. Yeah. So you just have to make sure that the distribution switch has either a trunk link and or access ports that allow it to connect to devices in the appropriate VLAN. All right, we're looking pretty good here. Let me go over to this switch, and I'm going to do the same thing. But in this case, what I'm going to do is copy them for copy. I'm going to configure. I'm doing a copy. Well, let me do that one more time. Paste. That'll help. There we go. So over here, you can see what I've done on distribution 2, because these devices are on VLAN 30 and VLAN 40. Okay, and this trunk link includes VLAN 30 and 40. This distribution 2 switch will be the default gateway for the devices on VLAN 30 and VLAN 40. And yes, these are the default gateway addresses for devices on this 10.30.0.0 network, VLAN 30, and this is the default gateway for devices on the 10.40.0.0/16 network, or VLAN 40. We're almost there, but you know what? Not quite. Also, I want you to notice that when we did this, it said that the interface VLANs change state to up, and that we have line protocol for that VLAN change. Yeah, the line protocol on that interface VLAN change state to up as well. All right, but just doing this does not actually make this a router, does not forward later 3 frames. Matter of fact, let's take a quick look at let's verify this. Let me go to PC 10.10.1.100 here. Let me do IP config one more time. Here's its default gateway. Okay, now can it ping its default gateway? 10.10.0.1. Yes. So that's just pinging the IP address on this switch, just as if it was a layer 2 switch. Okay, but what I'm going to do is, now that I have a default gateway, can I ping device on another network? Let's take a look. Let's do 20. What was that? 1.100. There we go. And that's not going to work because we have not enabled routing on the layer 3 distribution switch. Let that time out. Okay, you believe me, right? One more. There we go. Okay. All right, let me do this here. Exit. Show IP route. That doesn't look like a routing table that we might be familiar with. It's not. Well, it is, but it's more of a host routing table, not a router routing table. So this is what we have to do. I have to do config T and then a simple command, IP routing. Okay. So this command is required to enable this layer 3 switch to become really a layer 3 router, to perform routing. Okay. Now a router does this by default, except for IPv6 packets. Okay, that's another discussion, but you have to enable IPv6 unicast routing for that. There was a time, I remember years ago, when you used to have to do a command similar to this on routers. But let's go ahead and do it, see what happens. Doesn't look like much, huh? Doesn't look like much changed. But let's see here. I'm going to give this same command here, show IP route. Let's see if we see anything different. Well, I see something different. Yeah, look at this. Now it's telling me, yeah, oh, I'm a router. And you know what? I'm directly connected to these two networks. This means I can actually route between these two networks. I can route, if I get packets coming on, let's say from 10.10.00 network, like 10.10.1100, this is /16s. And it's destined for 10.20.00/16 network. Hey, I can do that. I'll send it, if it comes in on one of my interfaces, either an access port or trunk port associated with VLAN 10, I can send that out the appropriate interface or access port or trunk port associated with VLAN 20. Really? Yes. Let's take a look. Let's go right here. Remember, we were not able previously. Here I am on 10.10.1100, even though I had my default gateway. And although I could ping my default gateway, I could not ping a device in another network. Okay. Let's go ahead and try it. I'll just hit the up arrow. Same one. Rick's holding his breath. What do we got here? Why did that first one time out? I think you might know why. Okay, it had to do an ARP request for its default gateway. Okay, so that's my default gateway. Scroll up here, right? That's my default gateway. This packet is on another network. I know my default gateway IP address, but I didn't know its MAC address. I had to do an ARP request, get the ARP reply from the distribution 1 layer 3 switch, got its MAC address, forwarded out there. So now we have packets that are being routed from 10.10.1100 to 10.20.1100 via the layer 3 distribution layer switch. What about over here? I think, let's take a look. Can I get to 10.22.100? Again, ARP requests. Now, the ARP request might also be for the end device having to do, it'd be the distribution switch having to do a ARP request for the end device. So that adds, but now if I do it again, watch. Everybody has everything in its ARP tables, and we're good to go. All right, let's do the distribution 2 switch. Okay, I think this will be good. So we configured the interfaces here, the switch virtual interfaces. We've already done that, right? All right, and again, let's just verify exit. If I do show IP route, just a host routing table, more or less. So I'm going to do config T, enable routing. Enable routing, IP routing. There we go. If I can spell routing. I do exit. Let's do show IP route again. And yes, so because it has these two switch virtual interfaces, okay, and we've enabled routing, it knows that that I'm directly connected to devices on the 10.30.00/16. I'm directly connected to those devices, and I can get to them on any of my ports, either access ports or trunk ports that are part of VLAN 30. And I can get to anything on 10.40.00/16 network via any access port on VLAN 40 or a trunk link associated with that allows VLAN 40. And let's just triple check this as well. Let's go over here. I'm on 10.33.100. Let me get that out of the way here. Okay, let's see if I can make this. Here we go. Okay, so I'm on 10.33.100. Let's go ahead and ping. Let's ping way over here at 10.44.101. Hopefully Rick has all of his default gateways and everything correct. How do you spell 40? There we go. Yeah, looking good, huh? Now, the only thing we can't do yet, and we'll do this in the very next lab, is what? What can't we reach in our network? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Nothing over here can reach anything over here because we do not have a physical interface. Okay, I just need to, yeah, because people, yeah, there's no magic here. Let's ping 10.30.3.100. Okay, so I'm right here. There's no way I'm getting over here right now. Okay. There's no wireless. There's no physical cable. There aren't any pigeon, and there's no carrier pigeons. Look up that RFC sometime. IP over carrier pigeon. And I worked at a place once that we used carrier pigeons to send microfiche many years ago. Okay, but anyway, long story there. Notice no reachability. All right. But we're looking really good here. Okay, so when we come back to our next lab, we are going to configure a link here. But this is going to be what we call we're going to configure these layer 3 switches that are acting both as routers and as layer 2 switches. Layer 2 switches are doing trunks. Layer 3 switches, they're doing routing. They're the default gateway for these devices. Okay. We're going to configure routing between here as well. Okay, and before I leave you for the next lab, I just want to show you, I did some labeling here. I always like doing this. It can get a little messy, so you want to be a little careful maybe. But I put in the SVIs up here, show where I have my layer 2 trunk links. Okay, I also put VLANs here, just on a few of them. They're associated with a switch port, remember. Okay, the end device has no concept of VLANs. Okay, so we can kind of see how all of this works a little bit better. Okay, let's just do this real quick. So, let's say we're sending something from a packet from 10.10.100 to 10.10.2.100. Comes up here, comes in our VLAN 10 port. Come on there. Okay, goes across this trunk link, so it gets a VLAN 10 tag gets added, comes up to this layer 2 switch, in this case, distribution switch. It's actually a layer 3 switch, but it's acting as layer 2 here. The tag gets removed, and it says, oh, you came in on a VLAN 10 port. Let's and I got to send you out this trunk port, add VLAN 10. As a tag comes in here, VLAN 10 gets removed. Oh, come on, packet tracer, help me out here. Okay, and we'll go out this VLAN 10 port here. Okay. As far as routing goes, from here, let's go from here to here. Okay. Here, the packet encapsulated in an Ethernet frame associated with the MAC address of the default gateway 10.10.0.100. ARP request, ARP reply, encapsulates the frame in that MAC address, comes up here. It comes in on a VLAN 10 port. The switch says, I got to send this across the trunk link. Gets tagged as a VLAN 10 frame. Gets untagged by distribution 1 switch. But this is acting as a router now. It says, oh, this Ethernet frame is for me. Let's take a look. Oh, the destination IP address is 10.22.100. I look up in my routing table. I got to send that out a VLAN 20 link. I'm going to send that out here. This here, I'm going to send it out. Now, if it doesn't know the MAC address of this device, it doesn't sends out a ARP request. Actually sends it out both trunk links, the ARP request. Everybody over here sees it, and everybody over here sees it. Could be another good video. Okay, but these devices over here, ignore it. This device here, everybody here says no, except this device says, hey, that's me, sends back the ARP reply. That's how this distribution layer switch knows to send the packet encapsulated in an Ethernet frame with the MAC address of this device just out this trunk link. Okay, tagged as VLAN 20, removed as VLAN 20 here, sent out this port here. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. Okay, that'll make another good video. Just talk about how this all kind of comes together. But I hope this is helping, because next we're going to do something very cool, is connect these two here with both ends with a routed port. All right. Again, all of this lab, the lab itself is in YouTube, the comments, the link to the lab. The startup is in the very first lab that we did, the startup packet tracer file. I tend to update these labs because I'm always thinking of new things, or at least what to put in the lab itself, the PDF. So you may want to check on that on a regular basis. Okay, have a great day. Thank you for listening.